Are you ready to learn the top essential soft skills or person skills or human skills that you need as a virtual assistant? If this is your first time on my channel, my name is Leon Lai. I run a virtual assistant agency here in the Philippines called 2XU, and I post videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home. So make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos. Now, as someone who has been managing virtual assistants in the last 4 years, I've picked up the main reasons why a lot of our clients do stay for long and why sometimes even in the first 90 days that a client and a VA basically just isn't a match. And a lot of the time it's not even the hard skills that they have. It's not even, graphic skills or social media or admin skills. A lot of the time it's really soft skills. It's really the skills that you bring on as who you are, as part of your character and personality, that really make or break a lot of relationships that we have with our client and their virtual assistants. So I want to break down and walk you through how to be able to show up in this way with the different skills that you'll learn in a few minutes, and also how to excel at it, how to make sure that you're building that connection and relationship with your client, which is essential if you want to do this long term. Now, the first one, and honestly, if you learn this, it's going to be easier for you to learn everything else, is your communication skills. Now, when it comes to your communication skills, it's not about just what you say, it's also the promptness. It's also how you listen, and it's also how you make sure that there's clarity back and forth between you and your client. So what I mean by communication skills, so we have a lot of really amazing assistants in 2XU who have really good written English skills, and that's something that we do test for, is making sure that you have good written English skills. But when it comes to actually communicating back and forth, there's some messages that get missed, or the clients don't feel like they were heard, or they don't feel like they were seen, or worse, the client feels like the VA just said yes, but they didn't actually understand what it was that they need from them. So this is where honing in your communication skills really helps, because you start gaining confidence to be able to ask questions, to ask for clarity, especially if things aren't well communicated between you and your client, if there might be some slang or some words that might be a little bit too complicated or you've never heard before. So being able to gain communication skills and gain confidence in those communication skills is going to be really essential between you and your client. Again, the other parts of this is being prompt, basically, when it comes to communication, of replying. Doesn't have to be right away, because, maybe you're in the middle of something, you're trying to finish a task or a project, but at the very least, keeping them up to date on where you are at. When you work remotely, when you're not, not in the same office, the client puts a lot of trust that you're doing the right things, because they don't look over your shoulder, they don't see screenshots, you're not sharing your screen while you're working with them. So when it comes to honing those communication skills, part of that is keeping them up to date. Like, hey, I'm currently working on this. These are my focus for the day. One of the things that we have our assistants do in 2XU is, in the first 90 days at least, or sometimes more, is they'll send a beginning of day update of like, hey, here are my 3 priorities for the day. And then at the end of the day, we have something called the daily report, where they summarize what were the things they got done. This way, for the client, they don't have the need to keep following up, to keep micromanaging, because they know that they're going to get a report at the end of the day. So making sure that you are also consistent when it comes to your communication skills really helps build that trust and reliability with your client, so they're not as nervous, basically, when it comes to working with you. Next is building your self-management skills. Now, this is not talked about a lot, and I'll expand this in another video, but managing yourself is one of the key things when you are a virtual assistant. Now, what that means is knowing how to manage your stress, knowing how to manage your boundaries, knowing how to manage, basically making sure that you are pouring into yourself, you're taking care of yourself, so then you can show up for your clients. Too many times, especially a little bit in the Filipino culture, we want to show off, we want to show up, which is amazing, and one of the reasons why we've picked, hiring from the Philippines versus hiring from someone else. But the flip side of that is sometimes we don't manage ourselves well. we burn ourselves out, we work too much, we work 50 hours, 60 hours a week just because we want to make sure that something is done. But it's also important that you learn how to take care of yourself so you can keep showing up. Does this mean taking 5 weekends? No, it's finding that balance of being able to show up so then you can then recharge into yourself and then show up again. It's learning what are the habits and things that you can put into your day-to-day life that will help you be more, again, keyword that I will keep repeating throughout this video is to keep consistent with your client. So again, you can keep showing up for them. So find out what are the things that you can do to manage yourself, to give yourself maybe even part of this is giving yourself validation for doing a good job or being able to a little bit reprimand yourself when you haven't done a good job and getting back to it, bouncing back faster and learning again, how do I take care of me so I can take care of my client? Next, and this is key, you need to get better at your organization skills. Now, one of the main reasons why a client needs a virtual assistant is because everything is a mess for them. Nothing's ever organized, nothing gets done. That's usually how things go in their head. So you coming in as their virtual assistant, it's going to be key for you to learn how to organize. Now, the key thing, honestly, about organization is learning to observe, catch patterns, and put things into place. That's basically it. For me, I know I'm a highly organized person because I do those three things, and I'm a little bit high on neuroticism, which means that I'm like, okay, this needs to be in a certain place. But you have to have that certain part of you as a virtual assistant that things do need to be put in place so it's easier for you. So it's easier for you to work with your client, making sure the files are in order. If you're managing your client's Canva account, putting things into folders. If you are managing their clients' information, basically, making sure that you have a database of who their clients and customers are. So it's keeping those things organized. And if you don't know what are the key things you need to keep organized in your client's business, you can ask ChatGPT. But basically, you need to start just learning how to organize files, organize information. That's the biggest thing. As a virtual assistant, you need to learn how to organize information. So again, it's easier for you mainly to work with your client. And then, of course, if you're going to be taking a day off, you're taking a vacation, it's going to be easy for your client to find certain things in the business. And then later on, if your client does start hiring a team, basically, it's going to be easy for them to find certain things. So it becomes just this thing where it's a lot of work at the beginning to keep things organized, but later on, as it becomes a flow, it becomes a normal, it makes it easier for everyone else involved in the business to be able to keep things going. Next, and this is key again, is attention to detail. Now, when you are a virtual assistant, a lot of the times your client is this entrepreneur who has a big vision, big goal. They want to get, this part done in their business. But when it comes to the details part, they might not be, it might not be their forte. And that's okay because you have different things of strengths and weaknesses. But you as a virtual assistant, you need to have that attention to detail. Now, I said it a little bit when it came to learning organization skills, but it's just observing. It's just looking at the things and seeing if some things are in the right place or out of place. It's looking at and what I call double, triple checking basically before you send things out. And even after you send things out, like you posted it on social media, just check it again. Like, hey, was there anything else that I missed looking at it with fresh eyes? So it's really key as a virtual assistant, you catch these things. Now, might not be perfect, but at least you are training yourself to, again, hone in that observation skills. So then you can know when things are out of place, when things need to be fixed. You have that proactiveness basically that you start to develop of like, hey, this needs to be here, or like, hey, I think we need to add this into the systems or to the business. You learn that skill as you keep observing and starting to put things into place. Now, speaking of, one of the other key skills when you're a virtual assistant is being proactive. Now, it's kind of a good combination of the first two that I just talked about basically, of learning how to organize, the attention to detail. Being proactive is kind of a summary of the sum basically of the two. It's learning how to take action even without a lot of promptness. So if you see that, on your client's database, basically there's two people who have the same name, same information, same everything else, but they're for some reason two entries, putting them into one, that's being proactive. It's finding things that you don't really need a permission to do and actually just getting it done. So a lot of this could be just the low stakes things that, again, kind of like that, are just fixing something on the database, fixing something on their files. It could also be really big things such as like, hey, your client is traveling to another country. You want to verify that there's a car to pick them up. You want to verify that they don't need a visa. You want to verify, you're starting because you're observing, because you've honed in that skill of observing things and basically starting to calculate how this could end, what are the outcomes. You start also then taking action before things happen. You're more preventative versus like having to solve for something because a problem happened. You're preventing more a problem to happen by taking action before it even happens. Or before you even need to take action, you've already have done basically some sort of preventative to make sure that it doesn't become a problem in the future. Next is taking initiative. Now, being proactive and taking initiative, I know it can be a little bit confusing between the two, but taking initiative is just doing something first. Is you aren't even looking at problems that could happen, you're already looking at the solutions for different things. I have a ton of examples of my own assistant taking initiative on her own for things I've never really even thought of, just because she has now honed in that observation and knowing what could be possible outcomes for different things that we've set up. So she just takes initiative of like, hey, I've set this up for you. I know that this sometimes, goes wrong, or, this becomes an error. So I just went ahead and took care of this ahead before you. So you're already, again, taking action before it's needed. But unlike proactivity, the main real difference really with being proactive and taking initiative is, again, pre-proactive is more being preventing things to happen, while taking initiative is you're first to take action. You're first to like, hey, let me do that. Let me take care of that for you. Let me go ahead and make sure that this actually gets done. Let me follow through and make sure, like, for example, as a really simple example, let me make sure that this Amazon delivery goes through for you. So it's basically just having the willingness to step up and lead things. That is key for you as a virtual assistant, because this is how you learn leadership skills. This is how you learn organizational skills. This is how you learn how to develop confidence within yourself, because you're taking initiative for things that might not be fully your responsibility, but you're curious to see how it goes. Next is professionalism. Now, this is a key thing when you become close with your client. It's still essential that you have that sense of professionalism between you and your client. What this means is also respecting their boundaries. It's knowing their boundaries of what's okay with them and what's not. It's knowing that just because they're having life problems doesn't mean that's your problem. You're just there to support them and basically help them find solutions for things as they need to or as they ask you to. It's also knowing that how you act towards their clients, their customers, their team members reflects on how your client is. So it's keeping that in mind, that as you show up for other people in behalf of your client, you are literally representing them. So keeping in mind that you have to act a certain way as a virtual assistant, especially if your client is someone who has built a business who's high up, you have to show up as a representative of them. And again, on the flip side of that, it's also knowing your client's boundaries and respecting them, because it's still a workplace. Even though you guys get close, even though eventually most of our EAs or VAs become friends with their clients, it's okay, it's good, it's developing a relationship. I encourage that. But it's also keeping in mind that once you're in work mode, there has to be that level of professionalism, of respecting each other's boundaries, of not pushing things, of not asking for favors just because now you're friends. It's also still keeping that sense of professionalism that you're here to get the work done. Next is, speaking of helping them when they have problems, is also developing a skill of empathy, of knowing how to be in their shoes, of not, when you're bringing things up with your client, already kind of anticipating this is probably how they'll react. Let me, reword this or represent this so it will be understood differently by them. Or it could be like if they're having a hard time, being again that proactiveness of taking initiative of like, hey, what can I do? Or can I do these things for you to make things a little bit easier? So it's looking maybe at their list and having empathy of like, okay, they have like 70 things on their to-do list. What are the things that I can probably take off of their plate so their life is a little bit easier? So learning how to do that is again another key thing when it comes to being a virtual assistant. Next is learning and honing in your problem solving skills. Now, as the name entails, it's learning how to be able to see outcomes or foresee outcomes to solve a problem that you might already have. Or again, if you're on the being proactive, it's also being able to anticipate basically problems that might arise and already creating solutions for them. Now, this is something that in calls that I have with potential clients, these are one of the top things they always ask for is someone who is willing to problem solve with them and not just letting a problem sit there or ignoring it altogether. Next is adaptability. What it means is learning how to adapt throughout different situations with your client. It's being able to know that things in the business isn't always going to be the same day to day. It's going to change. You might be having new tasks or projects or responsibilities to take over and do, and that's okay because that's part of being someone who is behind the scenes in a business. You're seeing how it grows versus like when you have maybe other jobs where it was more of a consistent flow because you weren't really at the behind the scenes part of the business. Adaptability also means that your role might shift a lot as a virtual assistant. You might be the one testing out, lead generation in the business, social media, and then it gets passed on to the next person. So that relates to the next skill, which is being someone who's just constantly learning, being someone who's curious about certain things, someone who likes to study, someone who likes to watch YouTube videos about a certain topic that your client might be interested in, or reading books about how to develop yourself better and better in your self-management skills or leadership skills. It's knowing that just because you've been a virtual assistant for 5 years doesn't mean that you can't learn anything else new. It's keeping that in mind, especially when you're a virtual assistant where this landscape is changing every single time. We have AI coming in, we have these tools that are coming out. So you being able to be someone who constantly learns, who's constantly curious, keeps you up to date and keeps you basically just becoming more and more valuable in your client's business. And of course, there's self-confidence. Now, self-confidence, and this might be hard for you if you're an introvert where you know that you might be a little bit shy versus the extroverts who are like overflowing with charisma. You have to learn how to be confident with yourself. You have to learn how to speak up when you need to speak up with your client. You need to learn how to be confident when you're presenting reports or presenting certain things to your client. You have to learn basically to be who you are and be confident about it, to be able to keep showing up. Because if you keep being shy, if you keep being, and this is me talking as someone who is an introvert, if you keep shying away from presenting ideas or thoughts or taking action, it's going to just have the client think that you might not be as interested in the business just because that's how they probably might receive it. Because like, oh, they might not be as enthusiastic as, doing these things that I thought I would be, might not be a match. So gaining self-confidence is just learning how to speak up. It's just learning how to confidently present things, how to confidently assert things as you need to, asserting those boundaries as you need to, and also just learning how to fully just be this person who's constantly developing and learning more, and at the same time showing up, again, using the word consistently with your client. Now, the last skill I'm going to talk about, and I've used this word a lot, is being consistent. Now, it's not really much of a soft skill as much of as a reminder, honestly, that when you're a virtual assistant, one of the key things is you need to consistently be able to show up, or if you're not able to show up, communication. Takes us back to number one. I heard this in a conference that I was in last week of sometimes high performers are just consistent people, and I resonated with that so much. Just because it's 100% true. If you're able to really be consistent, you are seen as someone who is high performing because you're always showing up as much as possible. Inconsistent people a lot of the time fall off or don't really work out because the client can't rely on them, can't depend on them as a person that they can start delegating things off to, as a person that they can keep working with. So this is a key thing to really keep in mind as you are building yourself up as a virtual assistant, is that consistency really is key. Consistency is one of the things that even if you are someone who has 10 years experience, 20 years experience as a virtual assistant, if someone who has like 2 years experience can be more consistent than you, chances are the client will want to work with that person because they know that they can be relied on, that they can keep showing up. Even if they don't know something, they know that they can learn things and be consistent about it moving forward. So again, the ratio, and I've seen so many times this, that someone who has high experience but they're not as consistent gets beat by someone who might not have a lot of experience, but they're consistent about showing up. So this is one of the key things, is you want to build that reliability and trust with your client. Be consistent. Now, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there and comment below what's your favorite soft skill, or what's a soft skill that you're currently developing. I would love to leave you guys more tips in the comments. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so don't miss any of my videos every Sunday and Thursday on how to work from home and how to have a business from home, which you guys can check out those two playlists right here and the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and remember that small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!